My husband's secret hotel bookings. The GPS led me to his betrayal. Imagine finding a hotel booking on your husband's credit card, but it's not for a trip you planned. You brush it off, convinced there's a simple explanation. But what if that simple explanation unravels into a dark pattern, traced by GPS to a truth you never wanted to face? This is the story of how my husband's secret hotel bookings led me to his betrayal. The first receipt appeared on a Tuesday morning in October, buried among the usual transactions on our joint credit card statement. The Riverside Inn, 34782s. I stared at it over my coffee, my finger hovering over the line item on my phone screen. David had been traveling more frequently for work lately, or so he said. Senior architect at Morrison & Rhodes meant client meetings, site visits, presentations in cities I'd never been to. Probably another work thing, I muttered to myself, setting the phone face down on the kitchen counter. Our daughter Emma was upstairs getting ready for school, and our son Tyler had already left for his early morning swim practice. The house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every doubt, every whisper of intuition you're trying desperately to ignore. But something felt off. The Riverside Inn wasn't a Marriott or a Hilton, the corporate chains David's company always booked for business travel. This sounded boutique, intimate, romantic even. I picked up my phone again, typed the name into Google. The website loaded with soft jazz playing automatically. Images of a charming New England-style inn with exposed brick, 4-poster beds draped in white linens, a fireplace in every room. Perfect for romantic getaways, the tagline read. Your secret escape awaits. My stomach tightened. Mom, have you seen my chemistry textbook? Emma's voice carried down the stairs, snapping me back to reality. Check your backpack, I called back, closing the browser window quickly, as if the evidence itself was something shameful to look at. I told myself I was being paranoid. 17 years of marriage doesn't evaporate over a single hotel charge. David wasn't that kind of man. He coached Tyler's little league team for years, never missed Emma's ballet recitals, kissed me goodbye every morning before heading to the office. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our history. But over the next 2 weeks, I couldn't shake it. More receipts appeared. Different hotels, different cities, but always the same pattern. Boutique places, weekend dates, and David's explanations when I casually mentioned them always came just a little too quickly. Emergency client meeting in Portland. Last-minute site inspection in Burlington. You know how demanding the Harrison project has been, sweetheart. His answers were smooth, practiced, delivered with the same calm confidence that had attracted me to him all those years ago when we met at a friend's barbecue in Boston. He'd been 28 then, ambitious and charming, sketching building designs on cocktail napkins to make me laugh. Now, at 45, silver threading through his dark hair, he still had that same easy smile, but something had changed. The small things I'd been ignoring suddenly felt magnified under the harsh light of suspicion. His phone, always face down now on every surface. The way he'd tilted the screen away from me when notifications came through. Those late nights at the office that had become more frequent over the past 6 months. Stretching past dinner, past bedtime, sometimes past midnight. Big deadline, he'd say, kissing my forehead when he finally came home, smelling of coffee and cologne I didn't recognize, and the way he'd become less present. Even when physically here, sitting across from me at the dining table or next to me on the couch, there was a distance, like part of him was somewhere else entirely, with someone else entirely. I'd catch him smiling at his phone sometimes, a soft expression I hadn't seen directed at me in months. When I'd ask what was funny, he'd lock the screen immediately. Just a meme from the guys at work. The intimacy between us had shifted too. Our physical relationship, once passionate and frequent, had become mechanical, obligatory. He'd make love to me like he was checking off a box on a to-do list, present in body but absent in spirit. Afterward, he'd roll away immediately, reaching for his phone in the darkness. Are you okay? I'd asked one night after another one of these hollow encounters. You seem distracted. I'm fine, Claire. Just stressed about the Harrison project. You know how it is. But I didn't know. Not anymore. The internal battle consumed me. Every marriage advice article I'd ever read said trust was foundational, that suspicion was toxic, that checking up on your spouse was a sign of insecurity and weakness. Good wives trusted their husbands. Good wives didn't snoop. But good wives also didn't ignore their instincts. I started watching him more carefully, cataloging the small betrayals of normalcy, the way he'd take calls in his car in the driveway instead of inside the house. The new cologne, definitely new. something expensive and unfamiliar. The gym membership he'd suddenly activated after years of it sitting unused. Coming home with perfectly dry hair and no trace of sweat. Getting back in shape, he'd said when I commented on it. Feeling old lately. Gotta take care of myself. At 45, David was still handsome. Strong jawline, broad shoulders, those green eyes that had made me weak in the knees 17 years ago. But this newfound vanity felt like it was for someone else's benefit, not mine. Emma noticed, too, though she didn't say it directly. One evening while we were making dinner together, she asked, "Is Dad okay? He seems weird lately." "Weird how?" I'd asked, trying to keep my voice neutral while chopping vegetables. She shrugged, her 15-year-old face scrunched in thought. "I don't know, just distant. Like when I try to talk to him about college stuff, he's not really listening. His eyes are on his phone. He's stressed about work," I said automatically, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Tyler, at 17, was less observant, or maybe just less willing to acknowledge the shifting dynamics. He was focused on his own world. Swimming competitions, his girlfriend Madison, college applications. But even he'd made an offhand comment last week. "Dad's never home anymore. Think he'll make it to my meet on Saturday?" David hadn't made it to the meet. Another emergency at work. He'd texted at the last minute. I'd sat in those chlorine-scented bleachers, watching my son slice through the water, winning his heat, searching the crowd for his father who should have been there, who used to always be there. The worst part wasn't the suspicion itself. It was the isolation. I couldn't talk to my friends about it without sounding crazy. What would I say? I think my husband might be cheating because of some hotel receipts and a feeling. They'd tell me I was paranoid, that I needed to trust him, that every marriage goes through rough patches. My sister Rachel would have listened, but she was going through her own divorce in Seattle, drowning in her own betrayal. I couldn't add my fears to her burden, so I carried it alone. This gnawing doubt that grew teeth and claws, that woke me at 3 a.m. and wouldn't let me fall back asleep. I'd lie there in the darkness, listening to David's steady breathing beside me, wondering if he was dreaming of someone else. The battle raged inside me. Trust versus instinct, love versus self-preservation, the life I thought I had versus the truth I was terrified to uncover. I chose for those 2 weeks to be a coward, to brush it off, to make excuses, to convince myself I was imagining things. But deep down, in the place where truth lives before we're ready to face it, I already knew something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. The moment of clarity came on a gray November afternoon while I was cleaning out David's car. He'd asked me to take it to the car wash. His BMW was filthy from the construction site visits, he'd said, and I'd agreed without thinking much of it. But as I sat in the driver's seat, waiting for the automated wash cycle to start, my hand brushed against the center console screen. The GPS display blinked to life. I'd completely forgotten about the built-in navigation history. David was old school about some things. He refused to use his phone for directions, insisted the car system was more reliable. "It's integrated," he'd always say. "Better than staring at your phone while driving." My finger hovered over the menu button. This felt like crossing a line, like the moment where suspicion transforms into active investigation. Once I looked, I couldn't unknow what I'd find. The car wash's brushes began their mechanical dance against the windshield, cocooning me in a strange privacy. Water cascaded down the windows, distorting the world outside into abstract shapes and colors. I pressed the button. Recent destinations appeared on the screen, a simple list of addresses and dates. My eyes scanned them quickly at first, then slower, then with the kind of focused intensity that makes your vision tunnel and your heart hammer against your ribs. The Riverside Inn, Portland, Maine, October 12th. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, opened our credit card app, cross-referenced the date. October 12th was a Saturday, not a work day. David had told me he was at a client site review that entire weekend, had left Friday night and returned Sunday evening. "It'll be boring, sweetheart," he'd said, kissing me goodbye. "Just blueprints and construction updates. I'll be back before you know it." But the GPS didn't lie. He'd driven to the Riverside Inn, on a Saturday, and stayed. I scrolled further down the list, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. More addresses, more dates. I began cross-referencing each one systematically, mechanically, like I was dissecting something dead and cold on a laboratory table. The Harborview Boutique Hotel, Camden, October 26th, a Friday. David had said he was working late at the office. Might crash at a hotel near the site rather than drive home exhausted. Don't wait up. He'd texted that night. Love you. The Moonstone Inn, Newport, November 2nd. Another Saturday. He'd said he had an early morning client breakfast. Needed to be there by 7 a.m. Made sense to go the night before. I'd believed him. I'd packed his overnight bag. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The car wash had finished, but I couldn't move. The list kept going. 5 hotels over 6 weeks. All boutique places. All on weekends or Friday nights. Never a Marriott. Never a Holiday Inn. Never the corporate chains his company actually used for business travel. I opened Google Maps on my phone and started entering the addresses one by one, my historian's brain, the one I'd used in my museum curator job before Emma was born, the one I'd thought had atrophied after 15 years of PTA meetings and grocery shopping, clicking into sharp focus. The Riverside Inn, 127 miles from our home in Boston, nowhere near any of David's current project sites. The Harbor View Boutique Hotel, 142 miles away. Again, no project sites within 50 miles. The Moonstone Inn, 98 miles away, in the opposite direction from where Morrison and Rhodes had any active clients. The pattern was undeniable. These weren't work trips. They were deliberate escapes, carefully chosen destinations far enough from home to feel safe, close enough for convenient weekend getaways, with someone who wasn't me. I sat in that car for 45 minutes, rain from the wash cycle still beating on the windshield, methodically documenting everything. I took screenshots of the GPS history. I compiled the credit card charges into a spreadsheet on my phone, noting dates, amounts, locations. I cross-referenced each trip with our family calendar, with David's supposed work commitments, with my own memories of those nights when he was gone. October 12th. Emma had a friend's birthday party that day. Tyler had a swim meet. David had missed both, said the client meeting ran long. October 26th. That was the night Tyler had won his 200-meter freestyle at the regional championship. David had texted congratulations from the office, said he'd make the next one. November 2nd. Our wedding anniversary was November 1st. We'd celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. David had said he couldn't take the whole weekend off because of work. The next day, he'd driven to the Moonstone Inn, with someone else. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He'd spent the day after our 17th anniversary in a romantic inn with his mistress. Had they laughed about it? Had she worn lingerie while I'd worn the comfortable pajamas of a wife who believed she was secure? A flashback crashed over me, so vivid I could smell the garlic from the pasta I'd made for our anniversary dinner. David had been distracted that night, checking his phone repeatedly during the meal. When I'd reached across the table to take his hand, he'd squeezed it briefly but without warmth, like a reflex rather than a genuine connection. 17 years, I'd said, raising my wine glass. Here's to 17 more. 17 more, he'd echoed. But his eyes had been on his phone screen, lighting up with a notification he'd quickly swiped away. I'd ignored it then, told myself he was just stressed. But now, sitting in this car with the evidence literally at my fingertips, I understood. He'd been texting her, making plans for their next day rendezvous while I toasted to our future. The rage came then, volcanic and sudden. I wanted to scream, to put my fist through the windshield, to drive this car into a wall. How dare he? How dare he? But underneath the rage was something worse, a creeping, suffocating sense of humiliation. How long had I been the fool? How many times had I smiled and kissed him goodbye, packed his bags, believed his lies, while he drove off to fuck someone else in boutique hotels with 4-poster beds and fireplaces? I forced myself to breathe, to think, to plan. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I needed more evidence. I needed to understand the full scope of this betrayal before I confronted him. I scrolled further back in the GPS history. The addresses stretched back months. Nearly 8 months, I realized with a sickening lurch. This wasn't a recent thing. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a midlife crisis that had just started. This was a full-blown affair. Long-term, systematic, planned. March 15th, the seaside retreat, Kennebunkport. That was the weekend of Emma's school play. David had missed it, said he had a critical meeting with a client who was flying in from New York. Emma had been crushed. I'd made excuses for him, told her how hard Daddy was working to provide for our family. April 22nd, the Lavender Hill Inn, Portsmouth, Tyler's 17th birthday weekend. David had been at a conference. I'd thrown the party alone, cut the cake alone, taken the photos alone. Tyler had asked where Dad was. Important work stuff, honey, I'd said. You know how it is. May 30th, the Cliffside Lodge, Bar Harbor, Memorial Day weekend. I'd wanted to take a family trip, had suggested it weeks in advance. David had said he couldn't possibly take the time off, that the Harrison project was at a critical phase. So I'd taken the kids to my mother's house in Connecticut, while my husband spent the long weekend at a romantic clifftop resort with his mistress. Each revelation was a knife between my ribs. Not just the betrayal itself, but the calculated nature of it. The way he'd stolen not just our money and his time, but moments from our children's lives. Birthday parties and school plays and swim meets and anniversaries, all sacrificed at the altar of his selfish desires. I documented everything methodically, creating a timeline that stretched back 8 months. 23 hotel visits in total. Some were single nights, others were full weekends. The amounts varied, anywhere from $250 to $600 per visit, but they all told the same story. My husband had a double life. A horn honked behind me. I'd been blocking the car wash exit, lost in my documentation, in my rage, in my shattered illusions. I drove forward mechanically, pulled into a parking spot, and continued my investigation. I started searching for patterns beyond just the dates and locations. Was there a rhythm to his trips? Did they align with any other aspects of our life? The answer made me want to vomit. The trips intensified after significant family events. After Emma's 15th birthday party in June, 3 trips that month. After we'd returned from a family vacation to Cape Cod in July, 4 trips in August. After Tyler's college application process began in September, adding stress to all our lives, 5 trips in October and November. It was as if my husband used our family life as an excuse to escape to his other one, used our stress and our celebrations and our ordinary existence as justification for his extraordinary betrayal. I thought about the money, thousands of dollars spent on these trysts, money that could have gone toward Tyler's college fund, toward Emma's driving lessons, toward the kitchen renovation I'd been putting off for years because I didn't want to burden David with more expenses. We need to be careful with spending, he'd said just last month, when I'd suggested we take a proper vacation for Thanksgiving. The market's been volatile. Let's play it safe. But safe enough for $347 at the Riverside Inn. Safe enough for $489 at the Cliffside Lodge. My phone buzzed with a text. David, how's your day going, sweetheart? Think I'll be home by 7 tonight. Love you. Love you. Those words that used to fill me with warmth now felt like acid. How could he text that so casually, so easily, while the evidence of his betrayal sat documented in spreadsheets on my phone? I didn't respond. I couldn't. Any words I typed would either be lies to match his, or screaming accusations that would tip my hand before I was ready. I needed more. The GPS history and credit card statements were damning, but they didn't tell me who. They didn't tell me why. They didn't complete the picture. A memory surfaced. David's study at home. His laptop that he always kept closed, password protected. His home office that had become increasingly off-limits over the past year. Just need my space to focus, he'd said, when I'd asked why he'd started closing the door. You understand, right? I'd understood. I'd been respectful. I'd been a good wife. But good wives don't have husbands who maintain GPS histories of their adultery. I made a decision then, sitting in that parking lot with rain starting to fall again on the windshield. I would go home. I would wait for the right moment. I would access that laptop, and I would find the rest of the truth. Because this wasn't just about hotel rooms anymore. This was about understanding the full architecture of his deception. Every lie he'd told, every moment he'd stolen, every choice he'd made to value his pleasure over our family. I started the car and drove home through the November rain, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind sharp and clear despite the storm raging inside my chest. The gnawing doubt was gone now. In its place was something harder, colder, more dangerous. Certainty. The opportunity came 3 days later. David left for what he called a legitimate work trip, a 3-day conference in Chicago that his company was actually hosting. I'd verified it through Morrison & Rhodes's website, saw his name on the speaker list for a panel on sustainable architecture. For once, he was telling the truth about where he was going, but that didn't mean he hadn't been lying about everything else. Emma was at a friend's house for a sleepover. Tyler was at Madison's for dinner and a movie. I had the house to myself and 4 hours before anyone would return. David's study smelled like him. That expensive cologne, leather from his chair, the faint mustiness of architectural blueprints. His desk was immaculate. everything in its place, controlled and ordered, just like his lies. The laptop sat closed on the desk, a silver MacBook Pro that might as well have been a locked vault. I knew his password. We'd always shared them. Another artifact of the trust that had existed before, in the marriage I thought I had. But when I opened the laptop and tried to log in, it rejected me. He'd changed it. Of course he had. Sometime in the past few months, as his secret life had deepened, he'd locked me out. I tried our anniversary date, the kids' birthdays, combinations of our names. Nothing worked. I sat back in his chair, forcing myself to think logically. David was methodical, organized. He wouldn't choose a random password he might forget. It would be something meaningful to him, something he could remember easily. I tried the address of our first apartment. Rejected. The name of his college. Rejected. Then, on impulse, I tried Harrison 2024. The project he was always claiming demanded so much of his time. The screen unlocked. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd protected his secrets with the very lie he'd been using to maintain them. His desktop was as organized as his physical desk. Folders neatly labeled, icons aligned. I scanned them quickly. Projects, clients, finances, personal. My hand hovered over personal, then moved to his email application instead. The emails loaded. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. I scrolled through quickly, scanning subject lines, looking for anything that seemed personal rather than professional. Most were exactly what you'd expect. Client communications, project updates, industry newsletters. Then I saw a folder in his sidebar I didn't recognize. HL. Just 2 letters. Nothing that would draw attention. Nothing that would make sense to anyone casually glancing at his email folders. I clicked it. The folder contained 347 emails, stretching back 9 months. 9 months, not 8, even longer than the GPS history had revealed. My hands trembled as I clicked the most recent one, dated 2 days ago, the day before David left for Chicago. Can't wait to see you this weekend. The Riverside Inn again? It's becoming our place. I keep thinking about last time, about your hands on my waist, about how you whispered my name like a prayer. 3 more days. I'm counting every hour. I love you. H. The words blurred. I blinked hard, forcing myself to focus, to read, to understand. I scrolled to David's response, sent from his work email at 11:47 p.m., after I'd gone to bed, after he'd kissed my forehead and said goodnight. I love you too. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. The Riverside Inn, Friday night. I'll leave straight from the airport. Claire thinks I'm coming home Sunday, so we'll have the whole weekend. I've been dying to touch you, to be inside you, to remember what it feels like to be fully alive. D. The physical pain was immediate and real, a sharp stabbing sensation in my chest that made me gasp. To remember what it feels like to be fully alive. As if 17 years with me, 2 children, a life we'd built together, had been a kind of death for him. I forced myself to keep reading, clicking through the emails in chronological order, each one a fresh wound. March 3rd, the beginning. I can't stop thinking about last night. I know we said it was just a moment of weakness, that it couldn't happen again. But God, Heather, I don't want it to stop. You make me feel like myself again. Like the man I was before mortgages and parent-teacher conferences and the slow death of routine. Heather. So now she had a name. I searched through more emails, piecing together their story like a forensic investigator at a crime scene. They'd met at a firm event in early February, a gallery opening for emerging architects. David had mentioned it to me, asked if I wanted to go. I'd declined, said I had a headache, told him to go network without me. How different would our lives be if I'd just taken 2 aspirin and put on a dress that night? Heather was an interior designer, 31 years old. I found her LinkedIn profile linked in one of the emails. 14 years younger than David, than me. Striking in that effortless way younger women are, with long auburn hair and the kind of smooth skin that hasn't yet learned what gravity means. Her profile showed her standing in a modern loft space, arms crossed confidently, smiling like someone who'd never had to choose between her career and her children, who'd never watched her body change with pregnancy, who'd never felt invisible. They'd started as colleagues. Their emails showed. Professional at first, discussing a potential collaboration on a project. Then drinks after work to discuss it further. Then dinner. Then, March 2nd, from Heather. I know you're married. I know this is complicated, but I've never felt this kind of connection with anyone. When you talk about architecture, about creating spaces that inspire and transform. I see your passion. I see the real you, not the version you've become for everyone else. I don't want to be the woman who breaks up a family, but I also can't pretend I don't feel this. March 2nd, from David. I won't lie to you. My marriage is comfortable, stable, but it's been dead for years. Claire and I are roommates who share bills and coordinate schedules. There's no passion, no connection. We haven't been intimate in months. She's so consumed with the kids and her PTA commitments that she barely notices I'm alive. You've woken something in me I thought was gone forever. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I also can't go back to sleepwalking through my life. I had to stop reading. Had to stand up and pace the study, my breath coming in short gasps that felt like drowning on dry land. We haven't been intimate in months. That was a lie. We'd made love 3 weeks ago, on a random Tuesday night. It had been brief and unremarkable, but it had happened. We had sex regularly, if not passionately, maybe once or twice a month, which seemed normal for a couple in their mid-40s, with demanding schedules. My marriage is dead. She barely notices I'm alive. More lies. Or was it? Had I been so focused on Emma's college prep and Tyler's swimming and the daily machinery of family life that I'd stopped seeing my husband? Had I become complacent, assuming the foundation was solid while he was busy demolishing it from within? No. I pushed that thought away violently. This wasn't my fault. People in long-term marriages got comfortable, got busy, got tired. That was normal. That was life. The response to that wasn't betrayal. It was communication, counseling, effort. Not secret hotel rooms with a 31-year-old interior designer. I sat back down and forced myself to continue reading. There were patterns in their correspondence that made the betrayal even more calculated. David would email her late at night from his study while I slept upstairs, during his lunch breaks at work, from his car in our driveway before coming inside. The physical descriptions were explicit and detailed. I read about positions they'd tried, fantasies they'd shared, how she tasted, how he felt inside her. It was pornographic in its specificity, and each word felt like he was defiling not just me, but our entire marriage. But worse than the sex were the emotional intimacies. The way he shared his fears and dreams with her, things he'd stopped sharing with me years ago. How he'd told her about his father's death when David was 12, about the pressure he felt to provide for us, about his secret dream to teach architecture someday instead of practicing it. These were confidences I'd earned through 17 years together, through supporting him through grad school, through 2 difficult pregnancies, through the death of his mother 3 years ago, and he'd handed them to a woman he'd known for 9 months like they were nothing. In April, they'd started saying, "I love you." In May, they'd started discussing a future together. In one particularly gut-wrenching email from June, David had written, "I think about leaving Claire, about starting over with you. I imagine telling the kids, watching their faces as they realize their father is a cliché, another middle-aged man who threw away his family for a younger woman. But then, I think about waking up next to you every morning instead of just in stolen hotel rooms. I think about building a real life together, not this shadow version where we hide and lie. Would you want that? Would you want me, with all the baggage and complications? 2 teenagers, an ex-wife, divided holidays, financial obligations. Sometimes I think you deserve better than a broken man's second-half life." Heather's response: "I want you, whatever version that is. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, people will judge us, but I've never felt this way about anyone, David. I'm not some naive girl who thinks love conquers all. I know there will be hard days, but hard days with you are better than easy days with anyone else. If you decide to leave, I'll be here. If you decide to stay, I'll understand. But know this, I love you, and that's not going to change." I wanted to hate her purely, completely, but reading her words, I recognized something I didn't want to see. She actually loved him. This wasn't just about sex or excitement or ego. She believed in their connection. She saw a future, which somehow made it worse. If this had been just physical, just David scratching an itch, it would have been devastating but maybe survivable. But this was emotional infidelity married to physical betrayal. This was him building an entire alternative life, complete with love and dreams and future plans. This was him choosing her, not just her body, but her entirety. While I packed his lunches and picked up his dry cleaning and made excuses to our children for his absences, I checked his calendar application next. There it was, his real schedule hidden behind work appointments. Lunch meeting actually meant 2-hour afternoon trysts at her apartment in Cambridge. Client site visit meant overnight stays at romantic inns. Office overtime meant dinner dates at restaurants 40 miles away where no one would recognize him. The level of planning was staggering. He'd created a parallel existence so thorough, so detailed, that he could maintain both lives without either fully collapsing. He was living as two men, the devoted family man and the passionate lover, switching between them as easily as changing clothes. I found their text message thread next. He'd been using an app called Signal that didn't show up in his regular messages. Hundreds of texts per day. Good morning messages, good night messages. Photos, her in lingerie, him shirtless in hotel bathrooms. Sexual exchanges, sweet nothings. Thinking about you, sent from our dining room table while we ate dinner as a family. Miss you already, sent from our bed while I slept 3 feet away. You're my everything, sent from Tyler's swim meet. The one David had actually attended. The one where I'd thought we were having a good day as a family. There were also screenshots of conversations she'd had with her friends about him, about their relationship. Her friends knew. They encouraged her, called him a catch, and said she deserved to be happy. No one in her life was telling her this was wrong, that she was complicit in destroying a family. I found financial records next, buried in a folder marked personal expenses. He'd opened a separate credit card, not the joint one I'd been monitoring, specifically for the affair. The charges went back 9 months and totaled over $18,000. $18,000. Hotels, restaurants, gifts, a diamond bracelet in April, weekend trips to vineyards, a $600 lingerie purchase from an upscale boutique, flowers delivered to her apartment every week. The standing order showed $75 weekly, which meant he'd spent nearly $3,000 on flowers alone, for her, while I'd clipped coupons and bought store-brand groceries to keep our household budget manageable. The final piece of evidence I found was the most damning, a folder of photos on his laptop labeled HLTT24. I opened it with shaking hands. There were hundreds of images, Heather laughing in bed, sheets tangled around her naked body. David and Heather at the Cliffside Lodge, standing on the balcony with the ocean behind them, his arms around her waist, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen on his face in years. Selfies taken in hotel rooms, in her apartment, in his car. But it was one photo in particular that shattered whatever fragile pieces of my heart were still intact. David and Heather at the Moonstone Inn, dated November 2nd, the day after our anniversary. She was wearing a red dress. He was in a suit. There was a small cake on the table between them with a single candle. The photo was clearly taken by a server. You could see other diners in the background. They were celebrating their 9-month anniversary. While I'd celebrated 17 years with him the night before, I stared at that photo for a long time, memorizing every detail. The way he looked at her, with adoration, with presence, with the kind of attention he used to give me 2 decades ago. The way her hand rested on his on the table, their fingers intertwined, the way they leaned toward each other like magnets, like they couldn't bear any distance between them. This was the damning location, the Moonstone Inn, where he'd taken his mistress to celebrate their relationship less than 24 hours after toasting to our marriage with me. The undeniable pattern of repeat visits, 23 documented hotel stays, countless more meetings at her apartment or during work hours. This wasn't a one-off mistake, a single lapse in judgment. This was a sustained, deliberate campaign of deception. The wave of shock and disbelief hit me then, even though I'd been reading evidence for 2 hours. Some part of me had still been hoping for an explanation, an excuse, something that would make this all make sense. But there was no ambiguity here, no room for doubt. My husband was in love with another woman, had been for 9 months, had spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours building a life with her while dismantling ours. I took photos of everything with my phone, emails, texts, credit card statements, calendar entries, photographs. I documented it methodically, creating an archive of his betrayal that was time-stamped and undeniable. Then I closed the laptop, returned it to exactly where it had been on his desk, and walked upstairs to our bedroom. I lay down on his side of the bed, pressed my face into his pillow, and screamed into it until my throat was raw. When the screaming stopped, I cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook my whole body, that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the man I thought he was, for my children, who would have to learn their father was a liar, for myself, 45 years old and starting over. I cried until there were no more tears, until I was empty and hollow and cold. Then I got up, washed my face, and started planning exactly how I was going to confront him with the evidence of his betrayal. Because if David thought he could maintain his double life, could keep me in the dark while he played house with his younger girlfriend, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. David came home from Chicago on Sunday evening at 6:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I'd been watching the clock obsessively for 3 days, rehearsing what I would say, how I would present the evidence, how I would watch his face as his carefully constructed lies collapsed around him. I'd sent Emma to my sister Rachel's in Seattle for the week, telling her I needed some time to deal with a personal issue. Emma had protested. School, friends, her life was here, but something in my voice made her agree without much argument. Tyler was easier. He had a week-long swimming intensive in Providence with his club team. Both kids were safely away from what was about to detonate. The house was silent when David's BMW pulled into the driveway. I was sitting in the living room, lights off, waiting in the darkness like a predator. I'd spent 3 days moving through the stages of grief, denial. Even with all that evidence, part of me hoped I was wrong. Anger, the screaming into pillows, the fantasies of destroying everything he owned. Bargaining. Maybe we could fix this. Maybe counseling. Maybe if I was better, prettier, more exciting. Depression. The crying jags that left me empty and hollow. Now I was somewhere past all of that. In a cold, clear space where emotion couldn't touch me. I needed to be surgical. Precise. I couldn't let him manipulate me with tears or excuses, or the 17 years we'd shared. I heard his key in the lock, the door opening, his footsteps in the foyer. "Claire, I'm home." "Why are all the lights off?" I didn't answer, just waited as he moved through the house, calling my name with increasing concern, until he reached the living room and saw me sitting in the armchair, backlit by the streetlight coming through the window. "Jesus, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark? Where are the kids?" "Sit down, David." Something in my voice, flat, emotionless, final, made him freeze. "What's wrong? Is everyone okay? Did something happen?" "Sit down." He sat on the couch across from me, setting his overnight bag on the floor. I could see his face in the dim light, see the confusion shifting toward wariness, see him trying to read the situation, to calibrate his response. I'd planned this moment for 3 days, rehearsed it in the shower, in the car, while lying awake at 3 a.m. I'd considered yelling, crying, throwing things, considered the dramatic reveal, photos scattered across the coffee table, forcing him to look at his own betrayal, considered cold fury, hot rage, everything in between. In the end, I chose simplicity. I turned on the lamp beside my chair. On the coffee table between us, I'd laid out a printed timeline, hotel names, dates, amounts, 23 documented trips over 8 months, all color-coded, weekends in red, weekdays in blue, a neat, organized accounting of his adultery. David's eyes dropped to the papers, and I watched the blood drain from his face. How did you... "The GPS in your car," I said calmly. "You asked me to take it to the car wash 3 weeks ago, remember? The built-in navigation system keeps a history. Every destination, every date. I cross-referenced it with our credit card statements. The joint ones and the secret one you thought I didn't know about." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. "Then I accessed your laptop, Harrison 2024. Not a very creative password, David. I read your emails. All 347 messages in the folder labeled HL. I read your text messages on Signal. I saw the photos. I found the financial records. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photo that had destroyed me most. Him and Heather at the Moonstone Inn on November 2nd, celebrating their 9-month anniversary. This was taken the day after our 17th wedding anniversary. While I was at home, probably cleaning up from the dinner I made for us, you were with her, celebrating your relationship. With the money we saved for Tyler's college fund." David's face crumbled. He buried it in his hands, shoulders shaking. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Don't." The word came out sharp as a blade. "Don't you dare tell me you never meant for it to happen. You made a choice. Not once, but hundreds of times. Every hotel room was a choice. Every lie was a choice. Every time you looked me in the eye and said, 'I love you,' while planning your next rendezvous with her was a choice. I do love you," he said desperately, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Claire, I do. This thing with Heather, it got out of control. It wasn't supposed to be like this. What was it supposed to be like? I asked, my voice still eerily calm. A quick fuck to make you feel young again? A midlife crisis you'd get out of your system and then come back to your boring wife and your boring life? No. You told her our marriage was dead, that we were just roommates, that I was so consumed with the kids I barely noticed you were alive. He flinched. Was that true, David? Is that really how you see us? Because from where I'm sitting, I was a devoted wife. I supported you through every career move. I raised our children while you built your career. I ran this household, managed our social life, kept everything functioning so you could focus on your work. And you repaid me by fucking a 31-year-old interior designer in boutique hotels. It's not just sex, he said quietly, and I almost laughed at the absurdity. He was defending his mistress to his wife. I know it's not just sex. That's what makes it worse. If you just cheated on me, if you just scratched an itch, that would be devastating but maybe survivable. But you fell in love with her. You built an entire alternate life. You celebrated your 9-month anniversary with her while erasing 17 years with me. I stood up, began pacing, the movement helping me stay grounded. I read the emails where you discussed leaving me, where you imagined a future with her, where you talked about how hard it would be to tell the kids but how worth it she was. So tell me, David, were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep living your double life indefinitely? I didn't know, he said desperately. I was confused. I felt trapped between two lives, two versions of myself. With you, I'm the responsible husband and father. With Heather, I'm selfish, I supplied. Because that's what you are. A selfish, narcissistic coward who wanted everything, the stability of a family and the excitement of an affair, without having to sacrifice anything or face any consequences. That's not fair. Not fair. My composure cracked, rage flooding through the numbness. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've spent the last 3 days barely eating, barely sleeping, replaying 17 years of our marriage trying to figure out where I went wrong? Is it fair that our children are going to learn their father is a liar? Is it fair that you spent $18,000 on your mistress while I clipped coupons and drove a 10-year-old minivan? David was crying now, full-on sobbing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll end it with Heather. I'll do whatever you want. We can go to counseling. I'll be transparent. I'll earn back your trust. Just please, Claire, please don't give up on us. I looked at him. This man I'd loved for 2 decades. The father of my children. My partner in building a life, and felt nothing but contempt. You'll end it with Heather, I repeated slowly, as if that's some grand sacrifice, as if cutting off your mistress makes up for 9 months of betrayal. Tell me, David, would you have ended it if I hadn't found out? Or would you still be planning your next weekend at the Riverside Inn? He didn't answer, couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I want you to tell me about her, I said, sitting back down. I want to know everything. When it started, how it progressed. What she means to you. You owe me the complete truth. No more lies. He wiped his eyes, took a shuddering breath, and he told me. They'd met at the gallery opening in February, just as the emails had shown. She'd complimented his work on the Henderson Tower project, said she'd been following his career. He'd been flattered. A beautiful, intelligent younger woman interested in his thoughts. They'd talked for hours, exchanged numbers for professional reasons. The first lunch was innocent, the second less so. By the third, they were flirting openly. She'd invited him to see her portfolio at her apartment. He'd gone, telling himself it was still professional. They'd kissed. He'd left immediately, guilty and ashamed. But I couldn't stop thinking about her, he said quietly. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. When I talked, she listened, really listened, not just nodding while thinking about grocery lists or carpool schedules. The implication hung in the air, that I didn't really listen, that I was too consumed with domestic responsibilities to see him. So you're blaming me, I said flatly. My lack of attention drove you into her arms. No, that's not. I'm just trying to explain. I felt invisible, Claire, like I'd become just a paycheck, a handyman, a chauffeur for the kids. When was the last time you asked me about my dreams, my fears, what I wanted out of life beyond being a provider? When was the last time you asked me those things? I shot back. You think I don't feel invisible? I gave up my museum career to raise our children. I put my ambitions on hold so you could travel for work and take the promotions and build your reputation. I became Claire Hartley, wife and mother, instead of Claire Morrison, the curator who specialized in colonial American art. But you don't see that sacrifice, do you? You just see the domestic parts, the grocery lists and carpool schedules. and decided they made me boring. He had no response to that. Tell me about the first time you had sex with her, I demanded. Claire, please, tell me. I have a right to know how thoroughly you've destroyed our marriage. He swallowed hard. March 2nd, at her apartment, after the third lunch. We'd been texting constantly, getting more intimate. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stay away. When I got there, she answered the door in this dress, and I don't need those details, just the basic facts. We slept together. I left immediately after, told her it was a mistake, that it couldn't happen again. I came home and made love to you that night, trying to prove to myself that we were okay, that I was still committed. I remembered that night. He'd been unusually passionate, almost desperate. I'd thought it was romantic, that he was remembering why we were good together. Now I understood. He'd been trying to assuage his guilt by using my body. The nausea was immediate and overwhelming. The next day, I told Heather we had to stop. He continued. But she sent me an email, the one you probably read, about how she felt the same connection, how rare it was, and I was weak. I convinced myself that Claire and I were essentially over anyway, that we were staying together for the kids, that I deserved to feel alive again. So you decided to have both, I said. The stable home life and the exciting affair. Best of both worlds. I know how it sounds. I know what I am. But Claire, you have to understand. I do love you. What I feel for Heather doesn't erase 17 years of marriage, 2 children, a life together. Yes, it does, I said simply. Love without loyalty is just selfish desire dressed up in prettier words. You didn't love me while you were inside her. You didn't love me while you were spending our money on her. You didn't love me while you were lying to my face every single day. I pulled out my phone, showed him the photo of him and Heather at the Moonstone Inn again. Look at this. Look at how you're looking at her. That's not sex, David. That's not just physical. You're in love with her. And that means whatever you felt for me died somewhere along the way. It didn't die, he insisted. It just changed. Became comfortable instead of passionate. But comfort has value, Claire. Stability matters. Our family matters. I don't want to lose that. You already lost it, I said quietly. The moment you touched her, you burned down everything we'd built. You just didn't realize you were standing in the ashes. We sat in silence for a long moment. David was still crying, but I felt nothing. The tears had dried up days ago, leaving only this cold emptiness. What happens now? He finally asked. What do you want me to do? I'd thought about this question for 3 days straight, played out different scenarios, considered whether a marriage could survive this, whether I even wanted it to, whether staying together for the kids was noble or cowardly. I want you to leave, I said. Tonight. Pack whatever you need and get out of my house. Claire, please, this isn't negotiable. You don't get to sleep in our bed anymore. You don't get to wake up next to me and pretend we're a normal couple. You forfeited that right when you decided Heather's body was more important than your vows. Where am I supposed to go? The question almost made me laugh. I don't know, David. Maybe the Riverside Inn? I'm sure they have your credit card on file. He flinched. Or better yet, call Heather. Tell her your wife found out about your 9-month love affair and kicked you out. See if she's ready to play house for real instead of in secret hotel rooms. Because that's what you wanted, isn't it? To be with her. I don't know what I want, he said miserably. Well, figure it out somewhere else. You have 20 minutes to pack a bag before I call Emma and Tyler and tell them why their father won't be home anymore. That got his attention. You can't tell them yet. Claire, please. We need to figure out how to explain this to them together. Together? I laughed, bitter and sharp. There is no together anymore. You made sure of that. But I'll give you this. I won't tell them tonight. I need time to figure out how to explain that their father is a cliché, a stereotype, a walking midlife crisis who threw away his family for a younger woman. David stood up slowly, defeated. He looked older suddenly, the silver in his hair more pronounced, the lines around his eyes deeper. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I really am sorry, he said quietly. I know you don't believe me, but I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Claire. I always have. No, I said, standing to face him. You loved the version of me that served your needs, the wife who kept your house and raised your children and never demanded too much of your attention. But you didn't love me enough to stay faithful. You didn't love me enough to end this before it became a full-blown affair. You didn't love me enough to choose me over her even once in 9 months. I walked to the stairs, then turned back. You have 20 minutes. I'll be upstairs. When I come down, I want you gone. I climbed the stairs without looking back, went into our bedroom, my bedroom now, and closed the door. I heard him moving around below, the sounds of drawers opening and closing, the zip of luggage, the quiet grief of a man dismantling his own life. 17 minutes later, I heard the front door close. A car engine started. Headlights swept across the bedroom window as David backed out of the driveway and disappeared into the night. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 17 years and waited to feel something. Rage, grief, relief, anything. But there was only numbness, only the strange emptiness of a life suddenly rearranged. My phone buzzed, a text from David. "I'm staying at the Courtyard Marriott downtown. I'll call tomorrow to discuss next steps. I love you. I'm sorry." I deleted it without responding. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 days. I got into bed, pulled the covers up to my chin, and slept. Not well, not peacefully, but I slept, because the hard part was over. I'd confronted him. I'd seen his face as his lies collapsed. I'd reclaimed my dignity. Now came the harder part, telling our children their family was broken, filing for divorce, rebuilding a life from the ashes of betrayal. But that could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, I slept alone in a bed that felt simultaneously too large and exactly the right size. The immediate aftermath was a blur of logistics and pain, of lawyer consultations and tearful conversations with Emma and Tyler, of dividing a life we'd built together into his and hers. The complicated path of divorce stretched ahead of me like a desert, vast, hostile, impossible to cross, but impossible to avoid. I told the kids 3 days after David left. Emma flew home from Seattle. Tyler came back from his swimming intensive. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd confronted David, and I tried to find words for the unfindable. Your father and I are getting divorced. The simple sentence detonated in different ways for each of them. Emma, at 15, old enough to understand adult complications, immediately asked, "Did he cheat on you?" I'd debated whether to tell them the full truth. Some divorced parents maintain a united front, protect the cheating spouse, say it was mutual, or about growing apart. But I couldn't do it. I wouldn't lie to protect the man who'd spent 9 months lying to all of us. "Yes," I said simply. "He had an affair." Tyler, at 17 and usually more emotionally reserved, surprised me by crying. "With who?" "A woman he met through work. Someone younger. It had been going on for months." Emma's face hardened instantly, and I recognized my own rage reflected in her features. "How could he do that to you?" "To us." Tyler stood up, paced to the window, his shoulders shaking. "All those times he said he was working late or at conferences, he was with her." "Yes? The swim meets he missed?" Tyler's voice cracked. "My championship in October? He said he had an important client meeting. He was with her," I confirmed, each word a nail in my heart. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm so sorry." Emma was less emotional, more coldly analytical. "Are you going to take him for everything in the divorce? I hope you destroy him." "Emma, no, Mom. He doesn't deserve your mercy. He cheated on you for months. He lied to all of us. He chose some random woman over his family. I hope he suffers." I understood her rage, felt it myself, but I also saw how this would poison her if I let it grow unchecked. "Your father made terrible choices. He betrayed us in ways that are unforgivable. But he's still your father. I won't make you forgive him, but I also won't let my anger at him destroy you. Don't defend him," Emma said sharply. "I'm not defending him. I'm protecting you, because if you let this hatred consume you, you're the one who suffers, not him." Over the following weeks, the kids processed their grief in different ways. Emma cut off all contact with David, refused to answer his calls or texts, told me she never wanted to see him again. Tyler tried to maintain some relationship, but was distant, cold, clearly struggling with anger and disappointment. David sent endless apologetic texts, flowers, cards. He wanted to explain himself to the kids, to have family therapy, to somehow repair what he'd destroyed. But Emma wouldn't hear it, and Tyler wasn't ready. The divorce proceedings began in early December. I hired Margaret Chen, a sharp-eyed attorney in her 50s, who specialized in high-asset divorces and came highly recommended from Rachel's divorce lawyer in Seattle. "What do you want from this?" Margaret asked in our first meeting. I'd thought about it carefully. "I want the house. I want fair child support and alimony. I want half his retirement accounts and investment portfolio. And I want primary custody of Emma. Tyler is 17. He can choose. But Emma shouldn't have to live with a man who betrayed her mother. Sounds reasonable. Does he know you have documentation of the affair? I showed her everything. The GPS history, the emails, the text messages, the financial records, the photos. She let out a low whistle. This is airtight. He can't claim anything here. Most states are no fault now, but this level of documentation will help with asset division and custody. His infidelity, especially the financial aspect, shows poor judgment and deception. A judge will take that into account. David's lawyer tried to negotiate, arguing that David should keep the house since he'd paid the mortgage for 17 years, that I should accept a smaller alimony since I could return to work, that custody should be joint. Margaret destroyed each argument methodically. The house was marital property, purchased during the marriage with combined income. My sacrifice of career advancement to raise children meant I'd contributed equally even without a paycheck. David's documented pattern of deception made joint custody unrealistic. The turning point came when Margaret threatened to subpoena Heather in the proceedings. David folded immediately, agreeing to almost everything I wanted. The final settlement gave me the house, 70% of the marital assets, accounting for the $18,000 he'd spent on the affair, generous alimony for 7 years, or until I remarried, full child support until both kids finished college, and primary custody of Emma with Tyler's choice to live where he preferred. David kept his retirement account, his car, and his dignity, barely. The divorce was finalized on March 15th, 4 months after I'd discovered his betrayal. Exactly 1 year after his first hotel visit with Heather. I sat in the courtroom as the judge signed the papers, officially dissolving our marriage. David wasn't required to attend, and he didn't. I was alone except for Margaret, watching 17 years get reduced to legal documents and financial arrangements. It should have felt like victory. It felt like amputation, but it was also, strangely, a relief. The limbo was over. The questions were answered. I knew exactly where I stood, alone, but free. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. The pain didn't come all at once. It came in waves, unexpected and devastating. I'd be fine for hours, functioning normally, and then I'd find one of David's old shirts in the laundry and collapse on the bathroom floor sobbing. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. reaching for him, forgetting for a blessed moment that he was gone, then remember, and feel the loss all over again like a fresh wound. The hardest part wasn't the loss of David himself. The man I'd loved had disappeared months ago, replaced by a stranger who could lie so casually. The hard part was the loss of my life as I'd known it, my identity as a wife, my assumptions about my future, the comfortable predictability of a shared existence. I was 45 years old, starting over, with no real career prospects and 2 traumatized children who needed me to be strong when I felt anything but. Emma's rage sustained her for a while, but eventually it cracked and revealed the hurt underneath. She'd come to my room late at night and curl up next to me like she had as a little girl. "Do you think he ever really loved us?" she'd ask. "Or were we always just obligations to him?" "He loved you," I'd assure her. "What he did to me doesn't change that. You can't fake 17 years of being a father." But he lied about everything else. I know. Tyler took it differently. He maintained contact with David, accepted his apologetic attempts at reconnection, but something fundamental had broken. The admiration, the hero worship, the assumption that his father was a good man, gone, replaced by a sad adult understanding that people are complicated and flawed. David moved in with Heather in April. I found out through Emma, who'd seen it on social media. Heather had posted a photo of them in her apartment, with the caption, "New Beginnings." Emma had shown me the post with tears of rage in her eyes. I looked at the photo, David and Heather on her couch, smiling, his arm around her, and felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, not even really sadness, just a distant observation. So that's what he chose. That's what he thought was worth destroying our family. She didn't look evil. She looked happy, young, in love. She looked like someone who'd gotten exactly what she wanted and hadn't stopped to consider the cost to everyone else. I blocked Heather on all social media platforms. I didn't need to watch them play house. Didn't need to see them living the life David had described in those emails, waking up together every morning, building a real life instead of a shadow version. Let them have it. Let them discover what I already knew, that the passion that feels so urgent and real in stolen moments rarely survives the mundane reality of daily coexistence. That hotel rooms are easier than real life. That love built on betrayal has rotten foundations. But that was their problem now, not mine. My own healing came slowly, painfully, through therapy and time. I started seeing Dr. Patricia Walsh, a therapist who specialized in trauma and betrayal. She helped me understand that my rage and grief and numbness were all normal, all part of processing profound loss. You didn't just lose your husband, she explained in one of our early sessions. You lost your understanding of your own history. Every memory is now tainted with the question, was he lying then too? Was he already planning his exit? You have to grieve not just the present but the past. She was right. I couldn't look at old photos without wondering when it had started to go wrong. When had David stopped loving me? Had he ever loved me the way I'd loved him? Or had I been convenient? The right person at the right time, who'd served a purpose until someone more exciting came along. Dr. Walsh helped me work through the self-blame, the corrosive questions. What if I'd been prettier, thinner, more attentive? What if I'd gone to that gallery opening instead of staying home with a headache? What if I'd tried harder to keep our sex life exciting? None of those things caused his affair, she said firmly. He chose to cheat instead of communicating. He chose deception instead of honesty. Those are his failures, not yours. Intellectually, I understood. Emotionally, it took longer. I started small steps toward rebuilding. I redecorated the bedroom, getting rid of anything that reminded me of David. New bedding, new curtains, a fresh coat of paint. I reclaimed the space as mine. I started exercising, not to become more attractive, but to feel strong. I joined a gym, took yoga classes, surprised myself by enjoying the physical challenge. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during the busy years of marriage and child-rearing. Had wine nights where I told the whole story, sobbed into their shoulders, laughed grimly at the absurdity of it all. You're better off without him, they all said. He was an idiot to cheat on you. I appreciated their loyalty, but I knew the truth was more complicated. David hadn't cheated because I wasn't enough. He'd cheated because he was selfish, because he wanted the excitement of something new, without the integrity to end what he had first. In June, 6 months after discovering the affair, I did something I'd been putting off. I went back to work. The Boston Museum of American History had an opening for a curator of colonial art. My exact specialty, the career I'd put on hold 17 years ago. I sent in my resume, nervous that my gap in employment would disqualify me. But the director, Margaret Rothstein, remembered me from before. Claire Morrison, she said when she called me for an interview. I wondered what happened to you. You were one of our most promising young curators. I got married, had kids, put my career aside, and now I'm divorced and ready to come back. The interview went better than I could have imagined. I was rusty, but the passion was still there. I could talk for hours about colonial furniture design, about Paul Revere's silver work, about the intersection of craft and politics in revolutionary America. Margaret offered me the position at the end of the interview. You're exactly what we need. Welcome back, Claire. Starting work again was transformative. It gave me purpose beyond being someone's ex-wife or someone's mother. It gave me space to be Claire Morrison again, the woman who existed before marriage, before moth gauges, before the slow erosion of self that happens when you build your life entirely around other people. I was good at my work, remembered how much I'd loved it, came home energized instead of depleted, excited to tell Emma and Tyler about acquisitions and exhibits and the intellectual challenges of curation. You seem happier, Mom, Tyler said one evening in July. Like, actually happy, not just pretending. He was right. Somewhere along the way, without noticing the transition, I'd stopped just surviving and started actually living again. The revelation that changed everything came in August, 11 months after I'd discovered David's affair. Tyler and I were having dinner together. Emma was at summer camp, working as a counselor in Maine, when Tyler's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, frowned, then showed it to me. It was from David. Can we talk tomorrow? Something important. What do you think that's about? Tyler asked. No idea. Probably wants to discuss college finances or something. But the next morning, I got my own text from David. Claire, we need to talk. It's urgent. Can I come by the house? I almost said no reflexively, but something in the message, the formality, the urgency, made me agree. 3 p.m. today. Don't be late. David arrived exactly on time, looking terrible. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. Thank you for seeing me, he said when I opened the door. I know I don't deserve your time. You have 15 minutes. What do you want? He sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between his knees, looking at the floor. Heather's pregnant. The words hung in the air. I waited for the pain, the rage, the devastation, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt almost amused, in a dark, cosmic justice kind of way. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "I assume you're telling me because you need to adjust child support payments?" "No, I mean, maybe eventually, but that's not why I'm here." He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Regret. Real, genuine regret. "Heather and I are breaking up." Now he had my attention. "What?" "The pregnancy was unplanned. She's 32, I'm 45 with 2 teenagers. We started talking about what this meant. Raising a baby together. Getting married. Combining our lives for real instead of just the fun parts. And we realized..." He trailed off, swallowed hard. "We realized we don't actually know each other." "Not really. What we had was exciting and secret hotel rooms, but it doesn't translate to real life." I sat down in the chair across from him, fascinated despite myself. "Go on." "When she told me she was pregnant, my first feeling wasn't joy. It was panic. And my second thought was of you, of how you were when you were pregnant with Emma and Tyler, how excited we were, how it felt like we were building something together. With Heather, it just felt like a mistake." "So you're doing to her what you did to me," I observed coldly, falling out of love when reality intrudes on the fantasy. "Maybe," he admitted. "But also, I realized I destroyed my entire life for something that wasn't real. The passion I felt with Heather, the excitement, it was all based on the forbidden nature of it, on stolen time and secret meeting places. Take away the secrecy and what's left? Just 2 people who like the same architecture styles and have good sex. I truly don't need to hear about your sex life with her. Sorry, I'm just trying to explain. Claire, I made the worst mistake of my life. I threw away 17 years of real partnership, real love, for 9 months of fantasy. And I can't take it back. I can't undo the pain I caused you and Emma and Tyler." "No," I agreed. "You can't. She wants to keep the baby. I'll support them financially, be involved as a father, but Heather and I are done. She's moving back to Portland to be closer to her family." I processed this information, this unexpected final chapter to their story. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to know the truth, that it wasn't worth it, that what I thought I wanted wasn't real, that you were right. Love built on betrayal has rotten foundations." He leaned forward, earnest. "And because I need to apologize properly, not the hollow apologies I've been sending for months, but a real one. Claire, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for betraying you, for lying to you, for stealing time from our children, for spending our money on an affair. I'm sorry for making you doubt yourself, for making you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough. You were everything. And I was too selfish and stupid to see it until I'd destroyed it." I looked at him, this man who'd been my husband, my partner, the father of my children, and felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that karma had caught up with him, that he was facing consequences. Sadness that it had taken losing everything for him to understand its value. "Thank you for the apology," I said quietly. "It doesn't change anything, but I appreciate it. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know that I understand what I lost, that I'll regret it for the rest of my life." "What do you expect me to say, David? That I feel sorry for you? Because I don't. You made your choices. You get to live with the consequences. I know. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just asking that you tell Emma and Tyler the truth, that it wasn't about them, that I didn't leave because they weren't enough, that I was the problem, not any of you. I've already told them that." He nodded, stood up. "Thank you for seeing me. I'll let you get back to your life." As he walked to the door, I felt compelled to say one more thing. "David, I hope you do better by this new baby than you did by Emma and Tyler in the end. That child deserves a father who's present, who doesn't lie, who keeps his promises." "I'll try," he said quietly. "I'll really try." After he left, I sat in the living room for a long time, processing this unexpected development. David and Heather, broken up, their passionate affair crumbling under the weight of real-life responsibilities. Him facing the consequences of his choices, a broken family behind him, a complicated new fatherhood ahead of him, and nothing in between but regret. I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a sad recognition that destroyed lives have ripple effects, that betrayal leaves debris that takes years to clear. I told Emma and Tyler about Heather's pregnancy and the breakup that same evening. Emma's reaction was immediate and harsh. Good. I hope he's miserable for the rest of his life. Tyler was more thoughtful. Do you think he really regrets it? Or is he just sorry he got caught? I think he regrets it, I said honestly. But regret doesn't undo harm. He'll have to live with what he did. Do we have to have a relationship with the baby? Emma asked. Our half-sibling? That's up to you. Your father will want you to, probably. But it's your choice. Emma shook her head. I can't. I just can't. Maybe when I'm older, but right now, no. Tyler was uncertain. Maybe. I don't know. It's not the baby's fault Dad's an asshole. Wise beyond his years, my son. A message of resilience came slowly, organically, through the accumulated weight of months spent rebuilding. By September, a full year after I'd discovered David's betrayal, I barely recognized the woman I'd been. That woman, the one who'd sat in a car wash parking lot, devastated by GPS coordinates, seemed like someone else entirely. Younger, more naive, still believing in fairness and justice and the inherent goodness of promises made. This woman, the one I'd become, was harder, yes, more cynical, maybe, but also stronger, more self-reliant, more whole. I'd found strength in the broken pieces, learned that I could survive what I'd thought would destroy me, that I could be alone without being lonely, that my worth wasn't determined by whether someone chose me. My curator job had led to an invitation to write an article for American Heritage magazine about Revolutionary-era craftswomen, a topic I'd always been passionate about. The article was published in October, my name in print for the first time in 17 years. I framed the magazine cover, hung it in my office. Emma, despite her rage at her father, was thriving. She'd been accepted early decision to Brown University, planning to study psychology with a focus on family systems. I want to understand why people do what they do, she'd said. Why Dad destroyed our family. How to help kids who go through divorce. Tyler had committed to UC Berkeley for swimming and environmental science, would be leaving in fall, starting his own life 3,000 miles away. My children were moving forward, scarred but not broken, hurt but not destroyed, and so was I. One evening in late October, exactly 1 year after I'd found that first receipt from the Riverside Inn, I did something symbolic. I drove to Portland and checked myself into that hotel, not to torture myself with memories or to somehow reclaim the space, but to prove I could, to walk into the lobby without falling apart, to sleep in a room that represented betrayal, and wake up knowing I'd survived it. I booked a room, checked in, went upstairs. The accommodations were exactly as advertised on their website. Exposed brick, 4-poster bed, fireplace, romantic and intimate. I stood in the middle of the room and felt nothing. No pain, no rage, no ghosts. This was just a room. Just furniture and linens and meaningless ambiance. The power David's betrayal had held over me for a year was gone. I'd taken it back, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. I didn't stay the night. Didn't need to prove anything that dramatically. I checked out after an hour, drove home, slept in my own bed, and the next morning, I woke up and continued building my new life, the one without him, the one that was entirely, completely mine. The epilogue came 6 months later, in April, a year and a half after the affair was discovered. David reached out to ask if he could bring the baby, a boy named Lucas, to meet Emma and Tyler. He'd been born in March, healthy and beautiful, David said. Heather was handling single motherhood well, co-parenting with David on weekends. Emma still refused, but Tyler, now 18 and about to leave for Berkeley, agreed to meet his half-brother. I drove Tyler to David's new apartment, a modest one-bedroom in Brookline, a far cry from our house in Boston. David answered the door holding a tiny red-faced infant, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. "Tyler," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "thank you for coming." I stayed in the car, watching through the window as my son met his infant half-brother. Saw Tyler's face soften as he held Lucas awkwardly. Saw David's obvious love for this child despite the complicated circumstances. Tyler came back to the car 40 minutes later, quiet and thoughtful. "How was it?" I asked. "Weird, but also, I don't know, Mom. He's just a baby, and Dad really loves him. Like, I could see it in his face. That's good. Every child deserves to be loved." "Do you think he loved us like that?" Tyler asked quietly, before everything got complicated. "Yes," I said honestly. "Whatever else he did, I believe he loved you both desperately. Still does, but not enough to not cheat on you. Love is complicated, honey. People can love their children and still make terrible choices. One doesn't cancel out the other. We drove home in comfortable silence. Tyler had gotten closure, or at least a step toward it. Emma would find her own path in her own time, and I had found mine. 2 years after discovering David's betrayal, I went on my first real date. His name was Robert Chen, a fellow curator at a museum in Cambridge. He was 50, divorced, no children, kind and intelligent and deeply passionate about American history. We met for coffee, talked for 3 hours about the Federalist Papers and the decorative arts of the early Republic. He made me laugh, listened when I talked, didn't flinch when I mentioned I was divorced. "My marriage ended 5 years ago," he said. "It gets easier. Not better exactly, but easier." I'm starting to believe that. We went on a second date, then a third. I told him the truth about my divorce early. I wouldn't build anything on hidden foundations. He listened to the whole story without judgment. "Your ex-husband is an idiot," he said simply. "But his loss is someone else's eventual gain." I wasn't ready for anything serious. Told him that up front. He respected it, said he wasn't in a hurry either. We took it slow, built trust, proved that not all relationships are tainted by betrayal, that some people actually mean it when they promise honesty. I didn't know if Robert and I had a future, but I knew I had a future, with or without him, with or without anyone, because I'd learned the hardest lesson, that I could stand alone, that I didn't need someone to complete me, to validate me, to make me whole. I was already whole. The betrayal had cracked me open, yes, but I'd put myself back together, and the woman who emerged was stronger for having been broken. If I could go back to that day in the car wash parking lot, to the moment I discovered David's GPS history, what would I tell myself? That it gets better. Not all at once, not in a straight line, but incrementally, stubbornly, inevitably. That the pain you think will destroy you will actually transform you. That you are stronger than you know, more resilient than you imagine, more valuable than he ever appreciated. That the life you thought you wanted, the comfortable marriage, the stable routine, the assumption of forever, was built on lies anyway. Better to live in hard truth than comfortable fiction. That your children will be okay. Scarred? Yes, but not broken. They're watching you rebuild, learning that survival is possible, that strength can come from suffering. That you'll wake up one morning and realize a whole day has passed without thinking about him, then a week, then a month. That the obsessive replaying of memories will fade, that the what-ifs and if-onlys will lose their power, that you'll fall in love again, not just with another person, but with yourself, with your independence, with your ability to build a life on your own terms. That forgiveness is optional. You don't have to forgive him to move forward. You just have to let go of the hope that the past could have been different. And most importantly, that the GPS didn't just lead you to his betrayal, it led you to your own liberation. Because discovering the truth, as devastating as it was, freed you from a marriage that was already dead, from a man who didn't deserve you, from a life half lived in service to someone else's dreams. His betrayal was the worst thing that happened to you. It was also the catalyst for the best thing, finding yourself again. I'm Claire Morrison now, not Claire Hartley. I reclaimed my maiden name a year after the divorce was final. Some people thought it was petty, erasing his name from my identity, but it wasn't about him. It was about remembering who I was before I became someone's wife, before I merged my identity with his so thoroughly that I lost track of where he ended, and I began. Claire Morrison is a curator, a mother, a survivor. She has stretch marks and gray hair and laugh lines earned through tears. She has a job she loves, and children who are healing and a future that belongs entirely to her. She also has a past, 17 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, memories both sweet and poisoned. She doesn't erase that history. It made her who she is, but she doesn't live there anymore. She lives in the present, builds toward the future, finds joy in unexpected places. And when people ask if she's bitter about what happened, if she regrets the years she spent with a man who betrayed her, she tells them the truth. I don't regret the marriage. I regret that it ended the way it did, but I don't regret my children, the life we built, the woman I became through loving him. I just regret that he wasn't brave enough to love me back with the same honesty. She means it, most days. And on the days she doesn't mean it, when the old anger and hurt resurface unexpectedly, she reminds herself, you survived, you rebuilt, you're free, and that's enough. This is a true story of betrayal, discovery, and resilience. The names and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the emotional truth remains. Infidelity destroys families, but it doesn't have to destroy you. If you're going through something similar, know that you're not alone. That the pain is real, but not permanent. That you can survive what feels unsurvivable. Resources for those dealing with infidelity. Survivinginfidelity.com. AAMFT. American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. Individual therapy, specializing in trauma and betrayal. You deserve honesty. You deserve loyalty. You deserve love that doesn't come with lies. And if you don't have that, you deserve the courage to start over.